I had been working as a bus driver for years now. It was an okay job to do on the whole. Sometimes I got to meet some interesting people that would lead to some thoroughly enjoyable moments. Sometimes I would bear witness to relationship troubles or some ongoing drama that always turned out to be a fun ride. And sometimes I would even encounter total nut jobs that made the job a bit difficult. But worst of them all would be the shady people I came across once in a while, because with them, the trouble always came along, and you would never know when the trouble decided to sprout wings and jump in. So the rides with them always proved to be a little uncomfortable for me. I would always spend the whole ride waiting for the other shoe to drop, and hoping it would not on my watch. So all in all, as I said, it was an okay kind of job with some relatively peaceful days and some stress-filled, chaotic days. When the day would be too stressful for me, I would usually find solace in poker or craps. It was something I really enjoyed, but couldn't play much because I had been proven to be inherently bad at it, or more likely, totally unfortunate. I had tried my luck in both physical as well as online platforms, but nothing came out of it but loss. I would thank my stars and some semblance of self-control that I still have that I was not actually addicted to the sport. Otherwise, I would have been in real trouble. So, I wouldn't go as far as playing the game with loan money, but I still spent most of what I got on poker. I would wait until I saved enough for a trip to the Holy Land of my kind, Las Vegas. For the past 3 years, some of my coworkers would usually plan our trips to Vegas twice a year, so I would always tag along with them. We would all try our luck, but no one had it as bad as me. They somehow were able to win something while I never won shit. In fact, they had taken to saying that I was cursed by the gambling gods, if there were any. After renting the place there, spending a weekend maybe, and all the losses in the games, I would always come back with empty hands and pockets, telling myself this would be the last time, but after a month or two, I would get back to saving for the trip again. And as far as the time between the trips went, the time I was not able to make it to a casino, I would usually play online poker with payoff as much as in person, as often as I could. I would keep trying my hand with the online versions, but still never with any luck though. All of that was the extent of my life. I would go to my job, I would do it as honestly as I possibly could. I would save money from it as much as I could, and I would spend it all on poker as often as I could. I would not say I was happy with my life, but I wasn't necessarily unhappy about it either. Sure, it could be better, but it could also be worse. So I kept on living my life, and kept on being fine with it, the way it was. That day started out like any other. I got up, went about my day according to my routine. Nothing was out of the ordinary with the whole day at all. What was out of the ordinary, however, was what happened at night. I was on the last round of my shift for the day. The bus was mostly empty. There weren't many people out and about waiting for the bus this late at night. It was always like that during the work days, so I'd be able to even skip some of the stops as no one would be waiting there. I would even get off work early sometimes, owing to the less time spent having to make every stop on those nights. So that night was the same. I had already passed by some of the bus stops and found no one there. I was going to pass by the third one, and I almost did, until I caught a flicker of movement just as I passed by. There was someone there waiting for the bus. I pressed on the brakes and the bus came to a screeching halt. It was a man wearing a completely black suit. That was what made him almost invisible to me. He had blended in with the night. I opened the doors for him to get on the bus. It was a perturbing sight, to say the least. He was very well dressed and carried himself with effortless grace. He seemed too well off to travel by bus at this time of night. And what was even weirder, he could have chosen any seat from a more than half-empty bus. But he chose the one in front, right beside me. I found it a bit strange, but got on with the job. My confusion kept on increasing as the time went by. The gentleman, David, as I had come to know, was a very talkative man. He got me caught up in his conversation so well, I didn't even know how it happened. He kept talking and asking me questions, and I kept answering every single one of them. I usually never talked much with strangers, as I was quite wary about opening up to random people I would meet on my way. And in all my time working as a bus driver, I don't think I talked that much with anyone, ever. I felt a bit hesitant, but David was so charming and charismatic I couldn't even force myself to stop the conversation flowing between us. He stayed on the bus for around 10 minutes, and I felt like he got to know quite a bit about me. He stayed on the bus for around 10 minutes, and I felt like he got to know quite a lot about me. And then he asked me how my love for poker was going. I was so shocked I almost hit the brakes. I turned my eyes wide with shock towards him, swimming with so many questions, but he just stared at me with a mysterious smile on his lips and mischief in his eyes. I started out an answer, "Not very well," turning back towards the task at hand, driving the bus to the next stop. At this point, I was sure he knew every bloody thing about me. He gave a short laugh. "Would you like to be very well at it, though?" Came another question. I got a bit unnerved again. This whole conversation was making me very nervous. I was still deep in thought when he got up to leave the bus. Just then I realized I had already reached the bus stop and had even stopped there out of sheer habit, as I had no idea how I did it. I turned towards him, dazed, and there he was still standing beside me, not leaving the bus. Quietly, as if telling me a secret, he said, "I'm going to give you a little gift, dear friend, to change your luck. But only catch it if you want it." He brought forth a golden chip from his pocket and threw it towards me. I caught it on reflex. "Ah, you caught it. Well, use it well now. It will bring you many things." With mirth in his eyes, he left the bus, and I was left sitting there, puzzled, staring after him. I got out of my stupor when another passenger started yelling for me to move. I hurriedly put the coin in my pocket and started moving again. I tried looking for David from the rear view to see him crossing the road or something, but he was nowhere to be found. Maybe he blended in with the night again, I reasoned and shook my head, trying to get him out of my head to forget the strange encounter. Later that night, after I had completed my 12-hour shift, I went home. And as usual, when I got home from a long day at work, I placed my wallet and change on the dresser. I heard a coin drop from my back pocket. I looked down and searched around for it on the floor. It was the golden token that David had handed me earlier. I was so exhausted after such a long day, but still, for some reason, I decided to jump on my laptop and pull off one more game before going to sleep. I wanted to test the words David had said to me. I picked up the golden token and placed it on top of my TV stand and began my poker game. I started off the game with $150, and 30 minutes into the game, I had more than tripled my money to $5,000. It was a dream come true, making this much in such a short amount of time. I immediately cashed out and ran to the bathroom washing my face, thinking to myself that this could not be real. It couldn't actually be happening. The day had already gone by, but such a winning streak gave me such a sudden impulse. I decided to take my trip to Vegas sooner than expected, and this time I was going alone. I went online and purchased my flight ticket and booked my room, but after having a small talk with the operator, I decided to upgrade my room. Over the years, I had always stayed on the far south end of the strip when going to Vegas because it was fairly budget-friendly. But this time, I decided to splurge and go all out. The golden chip had me feeling myself, giving me a confidence boost. After a few more games of online poker, I had accumulated more funds for my next game at the tables in the casino. That trip to Vegas changed my life completely. In my very first game there, I placed $8,000 on craps and accumulated $30,000 by the end of it. The managers of the casino that night decided to upgrade my room to the penthouse suite since they noticed I was winning so much and was going to be their customer for a little longer than expected now, the next 4 to 5 days at the very least. I had even been offered a few entertainment shows as well as a steak dinner for my stay, which I took full advantage of. This was the first time in my life I had been treated with such protocol. The VIP treatment was getting to my head, as well as my continuous success. I was starting to feel a change in myself. My ego had inflated to the roof, and that's when I decided to take a shot at Russian roulette for the very first time in my life. I had never thought a day would come where I would willingly agree to play such a bloody game. Where I had previously called it a totally unnecessary and just a gamble that dumb people did, now just the thought of myself doing something so reckless had me filled with adrenaline and overpowering excitement. Although my winning streak had me sure I would be winning this too, but at the end of the day, the fact remained that it could be the last game I would ever play. In fact, it could prove to be the very last thing I would ever do, but the golden chip had seemingly given me infinite confidence in myself, along with good fortune. So, to play the ultimate game, the highest gamble, Russian roulette was up next. I had encountered just one man in my life who was actually going to play the cursed game. I had come across him in one of my late-night trips to the convenience store when I was in Vegas about a year ago. He was sitting by the sidewalk and asked for a light. I wasn't in any hurry, so I just sat beside him and lit one myself. So we just sat there for a while, and he started talking about how he had lost big in poker and everything was on the line. So he decided to go big or nothing. He was thinking of playing Russian roulette. I was shocked at the information. For one, I did not think the guy would actually be practically suicidal. And for the other, I didn't know these games were still played openly in this day and age. When I expressed the latter to him, he told me about a casino that sometimes played the game under wraps. I was intrigued, so I went along with him, to see the horror with my own eyes, I guess. One player of the game was my new acquaintance, Jacob, and the other, by the looks of it and by what I had gathered from the crowd, was a previous Russian roulette winner. He had already played the game 4 times and won every single one of them, considering he was standing alive right in front of me. His fortune had become somewhat of a legend in the area, so all the bets were placed in his favor. Jacob was on the losing side. I showed him some support, but that wasn't much. He didn't seem to need it anyway. He looked like he had already given up. As I stood there waiting for the game to start, I realized that all of us gathered there for the show had this perverse fascination to see someone take their own lives with their own will. It was a shocking realization. The game started and ended the way everyone already thought it would. Jacob was dead. The previous champion had won again. That was my only experience with Russian roulette. And now, I was going to play it myself. We were taken to a secluded lounge in the casino. It had a lot of security and just as much traffic. Many people were there to see some poor dude lose his life and for one of them to come out victorious. It was a very high-stakes game. The winner received $100,000, and it happened once in a while, when they had found someone suicidal enough, I guess. Which made sense as the gamble was put on people's fucking lives. The participants were supposed to be gathering at a table and the spectators around it. The people gathered there all seemed to be in high spirits, egging the participants on. They seemed more excited than the players themselves, which also made sense. They weren't there to potentially lose their lives. They were there to see others lose theirs. They were there to see someone splattered in their own blood by their own hand. And then I saw my opponent. It was the same guy who had played against Jacob. It turned out that he had already won 6 games now. This was his lucky number 7. That made me a little fearful, but I stood strong. The game started with everyone at the edge, owing to such high stakes. It started with the other guy, and he missed the first one. Same happened with me. With every missed shot, it got more intense, but the golden chip was on my side. The man was dead in the next shot, and I had just won myself $100,000. I had spent 2 days in Vegas now, and they had proven to be very fruitful. I was walking out into the lobby to try my hand on another game of poker when I saw David in the lounge area smoking on his Cuban cigar and sipping wine. I was quite excited to see him and curious about what had brought him to Vegas. He gave me that mysterious smile of his and made a vague gesture with his hands, mentioning that he had got another place around there. I didn't push it and just told him how ever since I had gotten that golden token, it had been bringing me so much luck that I had never even seen the amount of money in my life that I had with me now. Just in 2 days of me being in Vegas, I had accumulated up to $240,000. He got up and patted my shoulder, again with that secretive smile, and told me to continue playing and walked away. After about 2 hours on the poker table, I decided to call it a night. Just before turning in, I decided to pick up a few things from the store down the street. As I was coming out of the store, I saw 2 men approaching me. Feeling a little uneased, I hurried, trying to reach the building before they could reach me. It was already very late, way past midnight, so the street was almost empty, except us. Soon, they caught up with me and cornered me in an adjacent alley. I tried to resist, but one of them pulled a pistol and pressed it to the back of my neck. They asked me to give up my wallet and money. I decided to do as they said, seeing as I was completely unarmed and there was no one around to help. Just after I got my hand out of my pocket, I heard little clicks in quick succession, and I felt an intense burning in my sides. They had shot bullets already, and they had ripped through my body. I had never felt this much pain in all my life, and all this happened so suddenly, I didn't even get time to process it all. The only thing I felt was the searing pain. Soon I fell over with pain. I could feel the warm blood oozing out of me and coloring the streets red. Just as I was laying there, trying to make sense of everything, watching as the men ran away after taking everything I had on me. I didn't even care about the money or anything, just my life that was quickly draining out of me. Just then I saw David walking by. I called out to him, asking him for help. He started walking towards me. He reached me and sat on his feet in front of me, staring with the same smile I had come to call unsettling. He pulled down his glasses, revealing something I would never have thought possible. His eyes were glowing red. He must have read the shock on my face as he laughed, mirth dripping from him. And then his face started morphing into inhuman shapes, and he uttered the words that made me freeze up. "Your time to shine has come to an end, dear friend. That's how deals with the devils work."